Hello, everybody. Welcome to our October Eloqua User Group meeting. I'm KP. I'll be your host for the meeting. You can see two lovely ladies with me, Kelly and Lisa from Sojourn. That was nice timing. We didn't practice that wave. They're going to be our key presenters today, so look forward to hearing from them. So just real quick, why the heck am I the host of this meeting? So my marketing background goes back 17 years. I was a marketer who actually used Eloqua at two different companies over the span of 4 years and thought I knew a lot. And then I switched over to consulting, and over the last 13 years, discovered how much I didn't know and have learned a ton, and have had the privilege of hosting this Eloqua User Group to share with you guys some of the stuff I've learned, these guys have learned, the hot topics that our customers are struggling with or want more guidance on or want like the latest input on. And so we try to help you guys stay ahead of those things. More personally, I'm from upstate New York, near where Kelly's from in Canada. I'm actually feel more Canadian than American by where I grew up. And also now I'm in Tennessee. So I've moved south. And this picture on the left is actually from Florida. I went there a couple months ago in St. Augustine. And then our dogs are in a lake over here swimming in a reservoir, man-made reservoir in upstate New York, a couple hours north of New York City. And it's pretty cool. There's like 5 of these man-made reservoirs or lakes that feed water into New York City. As you can imagine, it uses a lot of water. So if you guys are ever at a point where you're thinking about like, should we keep Eloqua or not? Is it the best platform or not? Blah, blah, blah. I also host quarterly a marketing automation platform comparison webinar. It's Eloqua, Marketo, HubSpot, and Salesforce Marketing Cloud, looking both at ExactTarget or Marketing Cloud's Engagement Studio and Pardot. So you don't have to wait to the quarterly webinar. I'm happy to chat with you anytime about it. I know there's people out there wondering the future of Eloqua with the Oracle layoffs that happened in August. My input on it is still positive. Oracle still has a great focus on keeping Eloqua and innovating it. To that point, in December, in the December Eloqua User Group meeting, we're going to have one of the leaders of the product management team at Oracle that oversees Eloqua and other products. They're going to present to you guys about the product roadmap for Eloqua. So hopefully we can feel more confident in like it's sticking around and it's still going to be innovated and invested in by Oracle. So that's the latest that I know. If it changes, I'll share that with you guys, but I wouldn't rush to get rid of it or think that Eloqua is going away anytime soon. So here's our agenda for today. I'm going to give you guys a couple other relevant reminders to keep you in the Eloqua know. Then I'm going to hand it over to Lisa, who's going to walk you guys through a quick hack. It's a pretty cool thing with related to Eloqua Insights, and not going to say anything more. She's going to share with you guys the details. Then we're going to flip it over to Kelly on our team. She used to work at Oracle, and it's been at Sojourn for a couple of years now, thankfully. So she's going to share with you guys details about how to implement Eloqua's first-party cookies. We have a lot of customers doing that now. We have people who are buying Eloqua for the first time and want to understand better how to go about it. And she did actually present in January, if anybody remembers, feels like forever ago, this past January, about cookies, like first party versus third party cookies for website visitor tracking. And that was more of like educational. This is specifically how do you implement first party cookies for website visitor tracking with Eloqua, which hopefully everybody here is already doing, but chances are, really good chance you're not, and that's okay, but we'll help you guys learn how. And then we'll open it up to questions. If you have any tips you want to share, if you have any feedback, what have you. If you hate my GIFs that I choose, I do take time to try to pick good GIFs. So I'm, just let me know if they suck or if you like them. 2 quick things. I try to, every time I do this Eloqua User Group, start with what is this month celebrating or showing awareness for. So there's a couple of things in October, and I try to pick things that are global, not just like American focused, because that's, well, egocentric. So October is various things. If you literally Google this, you'll see like there's 20 things for every month that's celebrated. And sometimes it's like celebrate eating hot dogs month. I don't include those things. I try to keep it focused on things that I feel like really matter to us as human beings. This month is Hispanic Heritage Month, celebration month. I forgot the celebration part there. So if you guys didn't know, it's part of October, and actually it's part of September. It goes back to the history of, as you can see here, in 1968, it was actually in the US made an official week to be celebrated by a former president, Lyndon Johnson. And then some years later, 20 years later, Ronald Reagan made it cover a longer period, not just 1 week, but a full month period, September 15th to October 15th. And in that time, it was put into law that it would officially be recognized. That is US specific. But for me, I've always known like the term Hispanic, but as I was making the slide, I'm like, what exactly does that mean? And the second bullet you can see here, it has to do with people with Latin American heritage. So countries like Cuba, Mexico, and Puerto Rico, that their family originated there and then moved to the US. So in the US, we refer to folks like that as Hispanic. So there's probably people on this call that have some Hispanic heritage, maybe completely, and we definitely celebrate your heritage. Trying to think of what else here. Oh, more of the history as well that goes back to why September 15th to October 15th. So as you can see here, that's when Mexico and Chile celebrated their independence. So respectively, the 16th and 18th of September. Thought it was pretty cool. So that's one of the things we want to celebrate this month. And then the other is something near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure near and dear to many of you, breast cancer. So yes, mostly impacts women. Women does impact men. Men can get it as well. But one of my best friends for 20 years, Ashley, passed away 2 years ago, almost exactly. It was early November. Long battle with breast cancer, had a double mastectomy, then got brain cancer, ultimately passed away from that. But she became an advocate for people to get their exams done for their breast, to get mammograms, to check themselves and not be, shy about it. Like it's something that we all should be doing, either to ourselves, ideally with ourselves, or have a partner help you. And then it could lead to something else. Who knows? It could be fun. But I just want to remember Ashley. This is a random fact about her, but pretty cool. So when she was in college at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, she played soccer with some famous women like Mia Hamm and the other ones that I can't remember their names, but she was a part of the team, and there's been documentaries on that team, and they did really well for years and won various national championships. So, but you would never know that about her. She was so modest and just a great person all around. And this is one of my other best friends. The three of us hung out a bunch during college and after, and just maintained that friendship for 20 years. And Heather and I came to visit Ashley in North Carolina and went with her to Duke, where she was getting treatment for cancer and actually chemo that day. And of course, we're idiots, so we put medical devices, or I forget what it's called, around our heads just to have fun and lift some spirits there. Besides our own, the other people around us probably thought we were dinglings. So just some other facts to kind of help you, be educated on it, but what you can do to help. So breast cancer is actually the most common cancer in women after skin cancer. I didn't realize that myself. 1 in 3 women will get breast cancer. And I always thought cancer was often caused by stress. It's not. I read through quite a bit of information, mainly from breastcancernow.org, and found out some information on it. I was like, this is pretty surprising. But another thing is, you may not be surprised by this, but smoking actually encourages breast cancer, as does hormone replacement therapy. I dated a woman who had breast cancer from doing so much hormone replacement therapy in order to try to have a child, that she was able to get pregnant. So it worked for that. But the repercussion was she got breast cancer. She didn't pass away. She beat it. But anyways, so that was a positive situation. And of course, a history of breast cancer. That's why, we always say, like, if you have a history of heart disease or breast cancer or certain things, to keep, alcoholism, to keep up on it, and to keep going to get exams. Like for breast cancer, for me, it's been going to get therapy for mental reasons because of the addiction in my family, and to manage that as best as I can. So what can you do to help? Well, ladies, check your tatas. Don't be shy about it. It's really something that is easy to forget to do. And it literally takes less than a minute to do it well, to both breasts, if you have both of them. And again, if you have a partner that can do it and have both people keep an eye on your tatas, that helps. And then for those of us who know someone that's going through it, or you yourself are going through it, to ask for help. But also, like with Ashley, I supported her, emotionally, but also would go to events where she was doing a walk for breast cancer awareness, and to raise money for research. So you can donate if you're not the type of person that wants to get out and go to events, totally get that. But you can also donate. That's obviously another way, or do both. And just basic kindness to people, like I try to think when I'm at work and I come across someone who seems really not nice, not kind. You never know. They could be battling breast cancer. They could have a family member that's going through something hard. It may not be cancer, it could be a whole slew of crappy things, but to just try to have compassion. Then again, there are people who are total a-holes that we just need to have boundaries with. So, and wearing pink. So I chose to wear pink today for this purpose. I probably should have, Lisa and Kelly mentioned that to you guys. That would have been smart. Didn't think about it till we actually got on like 20 minutes ago. But anyways, that's something else that you'll see a lot. Random people, athletes, professional athletes and college athletes, etc., wearing pink for breast cancer awareness. So if you didn't know, most of you probably know that, but that's why. All right, moving on from that. So relevant reminders. If you didn't know this, so again, something you guys may already know, the next Eloqua release, they're done quarterly. The next one is going to be in November, as you can see in front of you. Not far away, guys, just a couple of weeks. If you want to know more information, there is actually a webinar that's taking place soon. The product team at Oracle always does a webinar, usually a few weeks before the release, at least a couple of weeks. And let's see here. We're going to have actually one of the product managers present next month in the Eloqua User Group about the highlights from the release. Most of you will already have that release live in your Eloqua environment at that point, but it'll be more to reiterate what they're covering in the webinar. So which I believe is this week or next week. And just so you guys know, I've had people ask, do we have to like contact Oracle support or somebody at Oracle or push a button in our Eloqua to upgrade it to the latest release? You don't. With software as a service, it automatically happens. You actually can't opt in or opt out of it. It just automatically or magically happens with SaaS solutions like Eloqua. I remember when I was in my 20s and somebody said the cloud and talked about SaaS solutions, it made my eyes cross. So hopefully that helps to try to wrap your head around it. The Eloqua, the Tip Tuesday, it's actually not so new anymore. It was new a couple of months ago, but the product team at Oracle that focuses on Eloqua and other products, they have the Eloqua Tips Tuesday. I would definitely subscribe to that. It's on Top Liners. Here's the link. I'll put it in the chat when I'm done jabbering here, but it's definitely helpful tips. I'm learning new stuff, 17 years in Eloqua, and I'm learning new things that I can do in Eloqua by just subscribing to that and reading it. And they do a really nice job. Jody Mooney from Oracle, and I think maybe others might be helping her, but she's spearheading this and does a really nice job making it nice and concise. And where there's instructions needed, they really lay it out nicely with screenshots. So I would definitely subscribe to that. And then just in general, the Eloqua Insiders group on Top Liners, this is where you'll see the Tips Tuesday, the Eloqua Release Center, so you can keep up with that. Eloqua uptime, downtime, get notified when your pod of Eloqua, where your Eloqua lives in the server world somewhere at Oracle, when it's having issues, you can get notified. So there's lots of helpful information there. You can also just post a question to the Eloqua user community and get feedback from people or search other people's questions. So there's tons of information there. Top Liners has been around for over a decade. Different infrastructure behind it at Oracle. They've changed it a couple times over the years. So the look and feel has slightly changed, but the content has been there the entire time. And it's a ton of good stuff. It's between the Eloqua Help Center and Top Liners. Those are the two places I'll try to go to first before I ask my teammates something that I need help on. And then Eloqua free training. There you go. You've got the Help Center again, Top Liners, the Oracle University free course called Eloqua Explorer, very high level, 1 hour course, not in depth, but it's a great way to just start with Eloqua if you haven't had any training and want to try to wrap your head around what Eloqua can do. And then the YouTube channel has other videos that you can watch there. Most of them are pretty short, which is nice for us with a short attention span. If you missed one of these Eloqua User Group meetings, you can watch past recordings. We have all of them on our website. I think going back like the last 2 years, I'm in our resource center on our website. And then if you want to keep up with not just thinking about Eloqua so much, but marketing strategies, marketing operations topics, other marketing technologies that are hot out there, both B2B and B2C, ClickZ is who I'd recommend to follow. They're one of the best, I think, and they do a daily newsletter. If you want to get it daily, you can subscribe to it. All right. I'd love to introduce you guys to our first presenter. Hey, Lisa. Thanks for hopping on today. So I'm going to leave it to you to talk about your topic and help us understand what we can do with the agents and Insight.
Okay, thank you, KP. And we had to laugh before y'all joined. We're all wearing hoodies today. So.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. We did coordinate that.
It's Hoodie Thursday, and I'm happy to see some familiar names in the participant list. So I recognize some names there. So thank you for joining us. What I'm here to talk about today, just briefly, is Insight reporting and specifically agents. So Insight, as you may know, is Eloqua's BI tool for reporting, and agents are basically a way to automate or schedule reports, right? And so think about you have a campaign that's running and you need a weekly report as to performance. Maybe it's a nurture campaign and you want to, instead of remembering to go into Eloqua every Monday morning and run that same report, you're like, hey, there must be a way to automate this just so that it lands in my inbox. And agents are the way of doing that. That's the mechanism for that automation. And not only can you, deliver that report to yourself in the format of your choosing, but you could also send it to others as well. So maybe you have somebody on the business side of the house who would love to get that, latest and greatest campaign metrics, statistics, that type of thing that they're keeping track of. So you can automate that through what's called an agent. And there's some key bullet points here. And I think, KP, this information gets shared out after the call. The links to the content here get shared. So there's more here in a YouTube channel. There's a video that you can watch if you're interested in a little bit more. I'm not going to necessarily go through how to configure an agent. We'll talk about it a little bit, but there's a lot you can do. Like with anything with Eloqua reporting, there's just a lot that you can do with reporting in general, and then with agents too, and customization of that and what that looks like. So a question that I get asked, I think it's come up more recently than it has in the past, is how can I actually see what's been configured in my instance? And I think the most recent example of this was I had a client who said, hey, I'm getting this report every, Monday, let's say, in my inbox, and I don't really need it anymore. And I'm not sure how to turn it off. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to find this agent. It could be the case that somebody else on the team set it up and it was set up under their user. And so this is just kind of a little hack that you can go through to find what agents have been configured and then maybe change them if you need to. Maybe you need to make some changes to the time of the delivery, who receives the report. I have another client who will ping me, maybe once every few months, and they're like, hey, can you add XYZ to this report so that they receive it in their inbox? I'm like, sure, no problem. So consider situations like that where maybe you've had member turnover and you don't know what they configured, but you need to get access to it, or at least need to see what it is. You may need to edit recipients or the content that's being delivered, or sometimes it's just an audit to say, hey, what's actually running in our instance? You may have some agents that were set up 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and they're still running, right? And you just kind of want to be aware of what's going on there. So this slide right here, specifically this point, gives you the link to use when you want to see what agents have been configured in your instance. The one thing to make note of is this pod number. So, as Oracle clients and Oracle or Eloqua users rather, you have a pod that's assigned to your instance. And this particular point here in the URL is letting you know which pod that you're on, because that will be important. So the example that I'm going to show today is specific to a client who's on pod 4. But if you were on pod 3 or pod 2, pod 1, etc., you would just want to swap this part of the URL out with your specific pod. So that's the one thing to make note of. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into Eloqua here for a minute. I did get permission from my client to show you this in their instance because they have quite a few agents that are out there. And some of them they want, and some of them we realized yesterday we need to deprecate. So it was a good little exercise to walk through this with them. So if you're not familiar with the Eloqua reporting engine, again, it's called Insight. And so this is like your Eloqua homepage, right? And when you log in, if you navigate over here to this menu option, this little graph here, and you open up Insight, it's going to open up a window that looks like this. Let me see if I can get this out of the way here. I'm not sure if y'all are seeing that or not. When you log into Insight, it's going to look like this. Yours will look a little bit different. Mine is showing me things that I've recently looked at. And so when you log into your Insight view, of course, it's going to be a little different in that it's going to show things specific to your view and what you've looked at. So this is kind of your home base for Insight. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste that URL that we just looked at on the slide. And this URL will then bring up, and it might take a second to load here, but it will bring up all of the agents that have been configured in your Eloqua instance. And again, so agents are the way to automate report delivery. And the quick telltale sign visually is that you'll see this little, I guess, it kind of looks like a little robot, but that's how they represent what an agent looks like. So just some things to note on this screen. You do have additional options here, the ability to go in and edit the agent, which we'll look at here in a minute, the ability just to run it. Let's just run it and see what happens. If you wanted to expand this and show more details, you could. So it's basically telling you when it was last run, when the next run is, if there was to be one. For this one, there isn't. Who recipients are, if it's enabled or disabled, which is also important to know because then quickly you can tell, oh, this is running, this is not, what priority it has, and then what report it's specifically using. So if you look at that one versus, and I know I had an example in here of one that's running, I just can't recall which one it is now, but you can see that as you click through these, you can just take a quick peek at what's going on with each one of these agents. So that said, there's also a menu option here for more. So additional things that you could do if you needed to, print this out, probably not likely, but if maybe you needed to rename this agent that's running, or if you wanted to make a copy of it, maybe tweak it a little bit, you could do that. Additional properties. And then if you wanted to turn it back on, here's a quick shortcut to actually turn it back on. So I just want to dig in on one of these just for a minute. And again, we don't necessarily have the time to go through and set up an agent from scratch, but I just want to show you some of the properties of what an agent is. So when you click into one of these, let's say you need to do some troubleshooting. When you click into one of these, it has several tabs here along the top about what's been configured. Okay. So just kind of general, is this a high priority agent? And that's going to give you that status in your inbox that this is a high priority report. What does that look like? The schedule of when it's going to run. So for example, this one was it's not enabled anymore. This box is not checked, but it was running weekly on Mondays and Thursdays. It started a specific time and then they had a selected end date. So you could have an example where you have a campaign that's running for 3 months and you want to run this agent every Monday at 10 a.m. and then you're going to end it after that 3-month period because you don't want to continue to receive those reports because they're no longer relevant. So you can leave it open-ended or you can select an end date. If you wanted to have specific conditions around when the agent was run, you could create that here. The type of content that's going to be delivered. So this is where you configure the subject line. The content is basically your analysis. It's a report analysis. The format that you want it in, and then do you want it delivered as an attachment? So if you're doing an Excel spreadsheet, for example, attachment would be recommended. You do have other format options if it made sense. Typically reports either in a CSV format or Excel, maybe tab delimited if you needed to feed it into another system. So maybe you're taking the raw output of this report and you need to feed it into another system. You could certainly do that with tab delimited. Recipients, who's going to receive the report, you have the ability to add people via an email address, or you can add them via their Eloqua user. So you could go through the users that have been configured in your Eloqua instance and search for people that way if you needed to add them via their user. So that I'm a user in this instance, so then I show up. So you have a couple of options. If you needed somebody that's not an Eloqua user already to receive this report, you could add them as an email recipient, which is very handy in certain cases. The destination, where is this report going? So you have some options here. I love the pager option. I love that that's still on here after all these years. If you needed to deliver it to somebody's pager, you could. So you could either choose to have this show up directly in your Insight homepage, or you could say, you know what, I actually need this to go to the email, right? The email address that we just looked at under recipients. So typically when I'm setting up agents for clients, that's where it's going. But you could also just have your agent run and just have it live in your Insight, if that made sense. And then any additional actions here, typically you're not configuring any additional actions here or specific conditions. It's like, I have a report, I need it to run, I need it to be delivered to me on Mondays at 10 a.m. and send it to these other individuals as well. So again, there's a lot you can do with reporting in Eloqua in general, but then there's also a lot of additional configuration you can do with these Insight agents. So it's very helpful in that regard, that if you need to, if somebody says, hey, can you help me troubleshoot? I have this report, it keeps landing in my inbox, I don't need it anymore. You have a place to start where you can just use this URL, paste that in there, and then go through your list and figure out what's what. If you run into some issues, so you may sometimes run into some challenges if the owner of the agent is obviously not yourself, and if the report that's underlying with the agent was not created by you, you may run into some challenges. You may have to contact Oracle support to see if they can help you either maybe switch that over or help you make some edits. Or what I like to do, if you have a team member who has left and they created reports, they created an agent associated with it. I do this for one of my clients. You could log in as that user that's no longer there, and you could make those changes. And you say, well, how do I do that? And this is a quick tip, and people may not like me sharing this, but you could go in if you have access to. If you don't have access to it, forget it. If you have access to go in and edit users, you could, for that person that's no longer there, you could go to the user record and you could change their password, and you could make it something that you're setting the password, so you know what it is. So you could log in then as that person. Just make sure that you leave this as no, that they do not have to change their password at next login. They get to maintain what you just gave them as a password, and you could log in as them, and then you have the ability and the rights to make changes to those things that you maybe do not own. So do we recommend that you change people's passwords and log in as them on the regular? No, of course not. There's an audit trail in Eloqua too to show, login history and who did what. So just be mindful of that. The only reason why I mentioned that is because in a pinch or in a bind, and I've had to do this for people, if you need to make changes to something, you need to disable it, or, some edits are needed and you need to log in as that person, you can. There's a way to do it. So 2 little hacks that I'm sharing with you there. So I don't know if there's any questions. KP, do we do the questions at the end, or?
Yeah, the questions, somebody did ask for how can you find your Eloqua pod number? I typed in the answer, but can you just show them in your browser
Sure.
URL?
Yeah, so when you log into Eloqua, so I've already gone past the login screen here, obviously, and you're just in my Eloqua today, right here in the URL, it will show you what pod number you're on. And I believe the pods go 1 through 7.
Yep. That's exactly right. Perfect. And then the other question was the URL, that special URL you shared. I put that in the chat for everybody. We'll
Okay.
also, guys, what I'm going to do is consolidate Lisa's slides and Kelly's slides with my slides and make one PDF for everybody. And I'll send that to you guys with the recording later today. So you'll have all this good stuff. Any other hacks you got, Lisa, up your sleeve?
I'm gonna save them for the next. I'm gonna save them for the next call.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for doing that, guys. Hopefully this is helpful. With any platform like Eloqua, there's little things like this that we like to share to help you make your life easier. And like Lisa said, you know, the hack of changing a former user, their password and logging in as them, it might be like, well, that seems sneaky. Well, they're not using it anymore. And there are use cases where we actually have to do it. We want to avoid it with most things, but there are situations, technically speaking, where we have to do it. So thankfully it's rare. But like she said, I would reiterate, everything you do in Eloqua is tracked. It's for compliance reasons. So yeah, so just, you know, don't do crappy things to it.
Yeah, be aware. We can find when you do those things. So,
yeah. It's in the operations area, there's the audit log that shows some of the stuff, but behind the scenes, any tool like Eloqua that's online is storing all of that information, and they've made it more accessible for compliance and IT teams because some of them require it and then they want to actually see it. We've had a client in the financial services industry where we had to export out of Eloqua's user audit logs and send it to their system so that they have history of it outside of Eloqua. So for different reasons, but anyway, let's keep moving. I'm not going to pull up my slides again. Kelly is going to present to you guys next, like I mentioned earlier in the agenda, about how to implement first-party yummy cookies for website visitor tracking with Eloqua, and getting away from third-party cookies is where the world is going. So Kelly, without further ado, all you.
Thanks, Karin. Okay, let me share my screen. Here we go. All right, so we're going to talk about how to install the first party cookie tracking scripts. So before I dive right in, I'm going to cover a little bit of what's required before we can install it, but we will get to that. That is the goal of my presentation today. So first things first, the cookies help websites remember information about your visit and help personalize the next one. And this is exactly why you want to go forward with first-party cookies, because the third-party cookies are often blocked. And as Karin said, this is the future, the direction of any kind of tracking. With the first-party implementation, the domain of the cookie is placed in the browser. It's the same as the domain being visited. So this is how that information is tracked. So for example, if you visit domain.com and the domain of the cookie placed on your computer is domain.com, then that's a first-party cookie. If the domain of the cookie is different, that's a third-party cookie. So to begin enabling these, you have to log into support. So it's a feature that has to be requested to be enabled. And in order to enable that feature, you have to have a secure branded tracking domain. So this isn't something that can run without it. As we talked about in the previous slide, you have to have that domain matchup. And the configuration that you're going to do in the back end of your tracking domain is how those two things are going to be linked. And this is why that's required. So I'll go into more detail to that as we get through the presentation. But surface level, these are the elements that you need in the SR that you open with support. SR means service request. And once that's been enabled, that's when you're going to provide the code sample I'm about to show you to your IT team, and that'll have to be added on all external pages that you want to be tracked. So in order to get that information that you need in your SR, you're going to navigate in Eloqua to the gear icon, which is your settings menu. And then there's 4 color bar blocks. The one in the bottom is called Display Preferences, and I've kind of blown it up here for you. And you're going to click on Company Defaults. And within the Company Defaults menu is all that client info. So if I go back, that's where you'll see instance name, which is sometimes also company name. Doesn't have any spaces. It's usually all one word. The site ID is usually a series of numbers, and the pod is the same as when you're getting the Eloqua release. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They are starting to jump into 7. So if you have a newer instance, you might be outside of that typical group of numbers. And then this is what the service request looks like in MOS, which is My Oracle Support. So this is what it would look like when you're creating it. I wanted to show you this to recommend creating this at a severity 3, because of course it's not a loss of service, it's an enablement of a new ability. And then that you got to include in the problem summary what it is that you want accomplished, and in the description there's that information. And these are of course just examples. Your site ID might be more than 4 digits, but 4 digits is the minimum. And then the pod number and your tracking domain. And then down here, of course, you're going to select Eloqua and the problem type, web tracking, first party cookies. When you select the correct problem type, that ensures that it's directed to the service representative who has those skills. That's what they use these categories for. It kind of helps gear things towards the people that are the most skilled in that area, and you get your expertise there. And usually the SR will run a little bit smoother for you. So for first party cookies, I've got some tips here for you. The big one lately is that they're moving away from using the word tracking in the domain. So some suggestions for an alternative to using the word tracking would be metrics, TRK, so like short for tracking, data. Some people for their instances use info. But it's totally up to you, as it's your domain name to come up with. But they're moving away from using the word tracking, since you would see that in the code, and so then it has the potential to be blocked. At the top here, I just kind of jumped over this. The first party cookie can't be shared across domains. So it's not possible to use this to track a single visitor's digital body language across multiple domains owned by your organization. So if you have like the multi-brand package, you would need to set this up for each domain that you want to do. It can't go across all of them. So if you have a larger umbrella corporation, it's not going to hop along all those different domains. And then what you're going to do once we're ready to get the tracking domain set up is to have a CNAME pointing towards this syntax. So this site ID information is something that we looked at earlier that you can find in your company defaults. And this is how it points back to Eloqua, to your instance, to give you the information that you're recording by tracking these people.
And I'll just add to that. So guys, this isn't something that most marketers themselves do. Like your IT person will do it. So like usually we're just trying to help you wrap your heads around the whole process. So ultimately, whoever manages your domains for your company, like at our company, it's our head of marketing manages it, and she logs into something such as GoDaddy to register a new subdomain off of sojournsolutions.com. Like I think we use something, I don't think we have tracking in ours for our first party cookies, but I forget what we use, a different subdomain. But so Kristen from our team worked with our IT person to get that subdomain done, I think through GoDaddy, and the CNAME is one of the pieces of setup that they do on their end. So just to clarify, because this is like cool stuff that will help you wrap your head around the full process, but just to clarify who typically does it.
Thanks, Karin.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so this slide here just goes in more detail about the reason why we need that domain and the importance of all that backend stuff that Karin was talking about that your IT team will do, which includes this particular line of code, and the code sample I'm about to show you is the most important one, in the sense that this is telling it to use the first party cookie and point it back to Eloqua using your secure branded tracking domain.
But don't use tracking.
Don't use the word tracking or the word example. Don't use the word domain either.
Don't use what we're showing.
You would be surprised. These are real questions that I've encountered and
Yeah.
examples.
Yeah. Stalker.sojournsolutions.com, stalking you. Don't
Yeah, exactly. I haven't heard a recommendation not to use the word cookie,
use-
but it's your domain. So when we're implementing that first party cookies code, and that's the first point here, is replace that tracking.example.com with your actual domain. Of course, if you put that in your code, it's not going to work because it's not a real place you can go. I don't think. And replace where it says site ID with the numeric code that's assigned to your instance in that company defaults area. Example.com, where it does appear, should have the same root domain on which your web pages are hosted. So if it's, just say like apples.com, it should be oranges.apples.com. That be the root domain should match. Otherwise, again, with the tracking, you're not going to be tracking that domain. The underscore ELQ capital Q is a series of demands that push to the Eloqua servers. So the scripts execute their function, and that's how everything is sent in order properly through from the website that the person is visiting to your Eloqua instance, and associates it with the contact record if it's a known visitor. And then we can segment based on that. So here is the code sample for implementing first-party cookies. So from this tag here all the way down to the bottom, all of that is what would need to be added to any of your website pages that you want tracked in Eloqua. This script doesn't have to go at the top, in the middle, or within any other kind of area. It can go anywhere on the page because these scripts are executed asynchronously. I don't know why I'm having trouble with that word right now.
It's a tough word. It is a tough word.
Asynchronously.
Whatever that means.
It doesn't matter where they're placed.
Yeah.
It's just that they fire as they fire. We don't have to worry about the placement in the script. It's going to go no matter what, as long as it's there. It just has to be present. And then in order to retrieve the visitor GUID, this is the function code sample for that.
And this is JavaScript, guys. Like, that was another thing for me 10 plus years ago when I started to see this Eloqua tracking stuff. I was like, okay, I get the word script, but is this HTML coding? It specifically is JavaScript, which is like a coding off of HTML, kind of in that family. So if you don't know, it's JavaScript in essence that does the magical tracking of us as we visit people's websites. So in the GUID, never mind.
No, it's good. Thank you, Karin. So why do we need a GUID? What is it? Why did I just say that? A globally unique identifier. That's what GUID stands for. It's a 128-bit integer, 16 bytes, that can be used across all computers, networks, wherever a unique identifier is required. This is used for a lot of things, but specifically Eloqua uses it to track the visits to your website. So this is how we know if they're a known visitor or not. We identify them with that GUID. Various types of information is captured from the visit, the page, the time they spent there, and their IP address. And then Eloqua can then use that information to segment, trigger notifications, or build program builder feeders based on the information that we get by tracking them with that GUID. And that's it. Any questions? Any other thoughts? Anything to add? Lisa, Karin?
I'm waiting to see. There's no questions in the chat or the Q&A. If anybody wants to speak about their experience implementing first-party cookies, good or bad, just raise your hand or chat and I can make your mic turn on through Zoom. I'll give it a second.
Quick thing I will add that I didn't cover in this is securing the tracking domain. So you need an SSL certificate. That's going to be a whole separate SR, but in theory, when you're setting up your instance of Eloqua, you're gonna set up a secure branded app and image domain. And those need to be done. Oh, yay, we have a person in parallel. And the tracking domain can be done at the same time when you're setting all that up, whether or not you're ready to use first-party cookies or use it right away. When you're filing all those SSL certs, it's a good time to just get it done.
Yeah. Good point, Kelly. Sally, the mic is open. If you'd like to chat.
Can you hear me okay now? There we go.
Yes.
We did ours early last year, and I think it's worth just highlighting for people that, particularly since things like Chrome have been blocking third-party cookies, you're likely to get quite a bit of a drop-off. So I think it's really worth doing kind of a pretty broad campaign of some kind, just to make sure everybody's got some kind of reason to click on things and reset those cookies. It took about 6 months to build back up to our normal levels. So just be aware that you might not see as much tracking as you're expecting.
It's a good point. So that's the piece that I guess this probably took me 4 years to understand is the Eloqua tracking, third party or first party. As soon as somebody visits your website, if you have the cookies being tracked, specifically, let's just talk about first party cookies, Eloqua is going to show their information as anonymous in your reports, like an insight. They have to actually do something. There's a couple actions that they do that starts to have Eloqua see that this GUID ID is KP, the contact in your Eloqua. So if you send them an email, like Sally just mentioned, if they click through that email, or even if they open it and an image downloads, like on their phone or on their computer, now we know that that GUID ID, that's that long 128 character ID is KP, it matches up. So now you can see all my website history. Even if I was on your website like 6 months going to all different pages and different days and different times, you'll now have all that history showing under my contact KP in your Eloqua. Another thing that they can do is if they submit a website form and it submits to Eloqua, or if they fill out a form on one of your Eloqua landing pages, that's another action that they can take. That now it's called the marriage or linkage of their visitor profile with their Eloqua contact. So to Sally's point, when you switch from third to first party cookies, you're going to have most contacts in your Eloqua not linked or married. Their first party cookie GUID ID, their visitor profile is not going to be linked to their contact record. So that's why she's saying, like, if you email people routinely, or if you don't, and you have, say, 500,000 contacts in your Eloqua with valid email addresses, if you can figure out a campaign that you're going to reach all of those contacts, ideally, encouraging, which the goal is, they open the email, they click through it, the typical stuff you'd hope for anyway. But as soon as they do one of those things, now their web profile with that GUID ID is matched up to their contact. So that took me, I'm not kidding you guys, years to understand. And I'm doing it with my hands. I probably should have had like a diagram, but
hands are perfect because it's and then they're
yeah. So
yeah, because otherwise they're an unknown visitor.
yeah.
And once they're a known visitor, then we can measure them better. And that's kind of what the presentation earlier this year was about, with the differences between first and third party cookies and then the new 0-party data, which is essentially, we haven't pulled it from them. They've given it willingly, and getting more engagement like that. So definitely when you make a switch like this, Sally's very, very right. Make sure you have an engaging campaign to follow it up so that you can start making those connections.
Yep. And if you're thinking about like, how long should I plan for the project? I would call this its own project, guys, where you're migrating from third-party cookies tracking to first-party with Eloqua. I would give yourself like, say, 3 months to get it done, because you're not just doing it yourself. You have to rely on Oracle support and somebody from your IT team to set up that tracking domain. Don't use tracking or naughty words, obviously. And then also to set up the SSL certificate to go with that, to make it HTTPS. That's the S stands for secure. So it takes a while of back and forth. It can. And then also the campaign is a part of that project. Sally, I really thank you for pointing that out. That's a big part of this as well. So if you guys, Kelly referenced her presentation from January, and I've referenced that. That's on our resource center on our website. So if you want to take a peek back at that, she really did a nice job showing there's actually 0-party cookies, first-party cookies, second and third. There's actually like 4 different levels of cookies out there. And they're not all technically JavaScript that gets put on your website, only first and third are. So it's a little bit confusing, but she explains it really well there. So let me just double check for any, there's no Q&A questions, there's none in the chat. Let me just make sure if anybody else raised their hand, I'm not ignoring them. Whoa, clicking on too much stuff. I don't see any other
But
hands.
yes, securing the tracking domain alone can take almost a month,
Yeah,
just including all of the back and forth, getting the CSR file, sending it to your IT team, making them set everything up, sending it back to support,
right.
getting it to active in your instance, all of the steps.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I give yourself a couple of months to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully you can get it done in less than 3 months, but everything we just mentioned takes time to do it well and to not rush your IT team. You know, it seems like these days everybody is underwater with so much going on in their roles, and IT teams included. And just out of respect for them with everything they have going on, you know, we want to be mindful of that, that we're not their only customer, so to speak. So I think we're good. I'm gonna wrap us up. If you do have any questions or tips, feel free to pop them in, or you can always email me. So our next Eloqua User Group meeting is going to be November 17th. Right before we get into the holiday season. Well, it's technically already started if you're Jewish, in September and October. So let's see here. I wanted to point out in that Eloqua User Group meeting, just as a recap again, we're going to have one of the Oracle product managers give the highlights of the Q4, the last new release of Eloqua that's happening in November. There's more in that release related to the auto opens. And they're going to have, I think it's the auto open activity available in the contact visitor profile, the contact activities area. Anyway, I won't steal their thunder. You can also read that on the release center, some of the key highlights, but they'll detail those more next month. We have another presentation. Oh, Octopost, one of the social marketing platforms out there that can do social management, like mass listening, mass publishing of content, analytics around your social channels. Eloqua can't do that stuff. Marketo can't, Salesforce Marketing Cloud can't, Pardot can't. All the different marketing automation platforms cannot do that stuff well. So we're going to have one of the best vendors out there present. They've presented, I think, once before, like last year. So they're going to come back and present, and they have an integration with Eloqua. That's part of the reason why we chose them. So thank you guys so much for joining today. Kelly, Lisa, thank you again for preparing and taking time to do that and presenting today. Much appreciated.
No problem. There was one comment in the chat, KP, about clients on pod 6 and 7 for the automated certificate management.
I'm seeing it now. Thank you, Henrik. So that's pretty cool. That has to do with your IT not having to set up the SSL certificate, right? So that's something new this year that Oracle is starting to offer. And so it looks like it's pod 6 and 7 customers only that can, CA is controlled availability. So that means kind of like beta, but it's farther along than beta testing. So usually beta testing is not everybody can test that new functionality in something like Eloqua. Controlled availability means Oracle has to approve you testing out new functionality, like their automated SSL certificate management that they will now do for you, pod 6 and 7, if you're in the controlled availability. Lots of exceptions to that, but you can put in an Oracle case or a service request to get that going and at least find out more information about it. And Henrik put in the link there. Let me just grab that and put it in the general chat, see if I can pull it over here. So this is what he's talking about. And let me just copy paste and put it in the chat. So if anybody is interested in that, you can take a look.
And thank you for that, because I had a client who was interested in it, but they were on pod 4. So it wasn't an option for them at this time, but you know, maybe sometime in the future it will be.
Exactly. Okay, well, without further ado, I hope everybody has a great rest of your Thursday and a nice weekend, and we'll hopefully see you in a month in November. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.